I'm so happy I can ask a few questions. Marilyn Atkinson, psychologist, psychotherapist, founder of Erickson Coaching International, but most of all enthusiastic, inspiring, creative and highly driven human being.
Whew.
Hello.
Hi, Štěpánka.
So I will go directly in the high logical levels. What does it mean to be human for you?
Ho, ho, ho. Well, I love what I call the big H. H for human. And the sound of the first H when it was used as a symbol was who. And it still is derivative of the English word who. Who are you? So human, it actually means God-man in some languages, God-man, who. Who is the word for the unknown. The unknown. We humans are very unknown because we've got mammal bodies, we've got a growing incentive to learn and know and choose and try and explore and discover more. We've got big dreams. We've got hopes for let's say it again, humanity. Because the word human, it's the same as in the word humor. That's where it comes from. And it's in every language. Talk to the Chinese, they know humor. It's in the same as humility. It's a wonderful, wonderful, original, integrative sound. Now, what's interesting is the written, for example, Russian shillelagh is got this shape. The Chinese have this shape for who. It's always between what I call the feet on the ground, the bottom of the H, the arms reaching up or reaching towards something bigger, higher levels of consciousness. And that's what we're reaching for. And we're always finding it. That's the wonderful thing. To be human is that as we reach, we discover. We discover our inner world. And it goes inward a long, long way. The realms of love, the realms of compassion go deeply into our heart. And we're going outward to each other, into the big we. Now, here in the 21st century, we're truly discovering what we means, because we have to. This is the age of global warming. This is the age where even in the next 10, 20 years, we must come together as a big we. We must discover what it truly means to be human, that everyone is our brother and our sister. We are of humanity. And everyone is also incredibly intelligent. Now, what does that mean? Intelligence. It means we're not just intellect, dry intellect. To be human is a connection of inner trust in allowing the unconscious mind, the deeper knowing, to speak. Because we don't know what we're going to say, do we? That when we start to open our mouth and speak, to be human speaks. To be human really speaks. And we can move past the personal name. Our name is just a tag. We're all pilgrims on the path. I think that's a good description. We're all travelers on the road. Each one of us. And we meet each other. Hello, traveler. Hello, friend. Hello, fellow human. Hello, you who get to share this human body and this journey. And we're also one with our children and their lives, and their children's lives, and their children's children's lives. That's why this earth is so precious, and why we must take care of it. We are now in the middle of a terrifying time. Many, many birds and insects and mammals are dying. It's called the Sixth Big Extinction. And we must find a way to live much more simply so that our children can have a world. There's too many of us for this world, holding the weight of so many expectations. To live with our ideas of success, that we must own all these things and have all these things. We need 4 worlds for all of us to have what we think we deserve as humans. 4 worlds to live a middle-class life. 4 worlds. 40% of us live on $2 a day. So to keep our humanity, we need compassion. We need to live simply. We need to wear the clothes we've got. It takes, I just found it out last night, 2,500 gallons of water to make a t-shirt. And right now, the plants and the animals need that water, and we need to find our way through global warming, find our way to each other, find our way to give back, and really be human.
Thank you very much for sharing. You really covered the whole, I don't want to say complex, but the whole of a human, really, all of us, it's all connected based on what you said. It seems to me that you started in here and you went all around the planet and ended up again
back here.
Back here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Would you say that exploring this inner world and this connection to the trust and the connection to everybody is the meaning of life? And I will connect it with another question. I know that you're a psychologist and psychotherapist. Why did you choose coaching after all? And is coaching something that can help us, to connect to this meaning and to this internal connection?
Okay, it's a great question. Thank you, Štěpánka. Well, I started out, like most people on this journey, very confused about what life should be. And like many young women, I was doing different things. I had a very difficult childhood. I ran away from home when I was young. I married when I was 20 and had children immediately. So I was suddenly married with children, but I was very curious. And I knew that somehow by reading books and studying, I would figure out my own heart. That's what I thought. And so I was going to university year after year and first studied sociology. I thought maybe I'd like to work with the UN. I then moved to psychology because I realized that I couldn't do anything to assist anybody in the world without assisting myself, because I was very unable. I mean, unable as a wife, unable as a mother. I found that, my gosh, I'd start to be the best mother in the world. I thought I could. And then suddenly I'd be sounding like my mother when she was scolding me and telling me I was a terrible child and so on. And what's going on here? I can't even be a good mother. What does it mean? I've got all these emotions that come up. And the emotions take me on journeys into history, and it's all made up. It's all lies. Have you ever noticed that? Yeah,
absolutely.
that the emotions say unkind things. And that we're absolutely, when we follow our emotions, going up and down like on rapids. And our mouth, when it moves, talks from some old history, some old conclusion. Not real at all. So I started out studying psychology. But, big trap. I discovered that even though there were geniuses in the psychological field, and I loved the journey through the great minds of the development of psychology. I loved Jung. I loved Wittenberg. I loved the various early passionate explorers. And they were. But the field of psychotherapy was fraught with all sorts of, call it mismanagement. When I was going to psychology beginners school, let's call it that, behavioral psychology was all the vogue. And it was as if a human being was a black box and we just needed to study their behavior. And I know, no, it's not true. There's much more depths inside. And I went deeply into the work of Jung. I loved his work. I loved Carl Rogers. But in fact, there was much more to explore. And it was only when I found the work of Milton Erickson that I found a path that I could follow into genuinely bringing the outer world and the inner world together. Because he understood that the actions people took created their habits, and the habits themselves became a prison. So that we need to have the inner power, the motivation to move beyond habits that stop us. So he understood that, but he also understood the unconscious mind. And that the unconscious mind is our, if you might call it, the deep core of ourself. If the conscious mind is like one tiny inch on the road from London, if we were taking boat and going across Europe all the way to Beijing, taking a path through all of Russia, that if the unconscious mind was taking that path, the conscious mind is 1 inch on that road. Because our conscious mind is just what we're experiencing right now. It's the platform on which we're talking. Mm-hmm. And it's the place where we say, oh, I'm here. But in fact, it's the unconscious mind that speaks. And it speaks from every piece of our history, every piece of all of our history as humans. Because we're speaking through our heritage and our culture. We're allowing language to speak its own meanings. We're allowing identities well before us. All of the humans who've ever spoken come into our mouth and speak when we talk. So the unconscious mind is huge. And so Milton Erickson understood that. And I began to work with him, fortunately, when I was about 28, 29. And I've been his student ever since. First, just learning and learning what I could. But he used the word solution-focused. And he used the word, even though he never ever used the word coaching, he used the word the unconscious mind has a mind of its own. He said, pretend anything and you can master it. And he said, when we aim for the solutions, we don't have to go into the problems. Now that meant walking around all the negative language in our mind. Now I understood that, even though he still talked in negatives from time to time. When he was doing any healing work, he was always aiming towards the deeper knowing, and it wasn't ever negative. And it came to me, hey, our unconscious mind is a little bit like a photograph. We can only see the positive. When we turn it around and try and look at the negative, we can't really see it. And it's also like a video. We only see what's there. We don't see what's not there. And solution focused is like that. We can only talk to what is, not to what isn't. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So when I started working with solution focused, noticed that it was positive. And from Milton Erickson, we could always see it was personal. He would not talk, he would talk in abstractions. He'd talk about your learning. He'd talk about your realization. He'd talk about your awareness. He'd say, your unconscious mind knows a lot more than you do. Your unconscious mind can do it. He'd go right to action. He'd talk about moving past habits. Your unconscious mind is your inner knowledge. And he would take us there. So solution focused, when we started to bring it to the people, it was positive, it was in our control, and it was specific, and it was ecological. It's what would be good for us. What are the habits that allow us to live a balanced life? That means it's physical. For me, it has to be physical and something I can do with my physical energy. It needs to be relational, and positively relational. Our relationship needs to be about who we are, not about who we aren't. It needs to be focused on the future, because our intentions to move in the moment, to take action, must direct us forward, or we ourselves don't know who we are. We can't move. As soon as we go into negatives, the spin takes us into either ors and what ifs and yes, no's and this versus that, and we're talking to ourselves. We've got a stereophonic system on one ear and on the other ear, blah, 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 blah. We can't see or hear each other. And it needs to be meaningful. So we need to be physical, we need to be relational, we need to be intentional, and we need to find the deeper meaning that we can share. And that's solution focused. Now the word coaching, where did it come? It came over the hills from sports coaching, which is totally behavioral. Sports coaching is about doing it and getting it done, but it's very visual. That means it's positive. A good sports coach helps his client to see what they're going to do and then do it. It's intentional. And then the meaning filters in. Who are we? How does it work? So we started to use sports coaching as a metaphor, and the metaphor grew. Back in 1979, I was in Stockholm visiting my relatives, and then in Norway visiting and teaching. First of all, we were working with NLP, teaching basic NLP, but then I did a course in coaching. Now, I'd heard other people were using the metaphor back in the States. And we were using the word coaching like the English coach. What does a coach do? It brings you from one place to another. If you think about that, the royal people would ride in a wonderful coach that would carry them. It brings you. Because the unconscious mind brings you. We don't do it. The unconscious mind is like the horse that pulls. So we started using the word coaching back then in Norway. And meanwhile in the States it was being used as a sports metaphor. All sorts of other groups. So it came from different areas. And then in Russia in 1979, I was teaching my first course where I used that primarily as the metaphor. And we brought it into Latvia. And we brought it in, we did a big course in Latvia with 80 people. And coming back into the States, I found the metaphor was catching. They were using it in different ways, in a much simpler way. But we had Milton Erickson's system. We had solution focused. So it just grew and grew and grew and grew from there.
So would you say the biggest benefit from psychology and psychotherapy is that you focus from present moment to the future?
Right.
And you use the whole potential of the human being at present moment to create what's possible for them, to bring the trust and...
Lovely.
And
yeah. Because it's all about intention. Intention is our vision towards what are we becoming. And it is the unconscious mind which has a journey, a wonderful journey, to create a lifetime that maximizes our destiny, our potential, our genuine hopes to be human.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Yay.
I know you're very active and you're flying all around the world and teaching and building and keep inspiring. Would you share with us 3 techniques that you do with you on a regular basis, that keeps you going and focused and energized, and you know that you keep expressing your meaning into the life, into the world?
Great. Whew. Well, on a daily basis, I do some inner mindfulness practice. I do that every day. My husband and I sit together and we do longer mindfulness practices, often, maybe 3 times a week. I always stretch. I always do sort of basic yoga, something like a sun salutation every day. And I exercise. So these are ways to keep balance. The yoga and the mindfulness practice are not long, but they're there. They're my practice. And then I also, on a personal basis, say grace. My husband and I hold hands every time we eat with whoever is there. And we are grateful, deeply grateful for this life and for this moment and for the people we're with. And we share our gratitude for the deep knowing that's coming through us and the love that permeates everything and the opportunities that this life brings. So those are our main practices. They're very simple. And I read, I study, I make books, I write. Now that's early morning. And that comes from asking questions at night. So I ask my deeper knowing to do the job. And then I listen inward. And in the morning I get the answers. They come through. So I'm always doing a mindfulness practice. Even at night, I briefly imagine as if I was a clock, and that clock is going around the whole face of the clock through the night and visiting all the 4 quadrants and bringing back at the unconscious level what I need so that I can awaken in the morning and do my work. And then I don't have good ideas. My unconscious mind says, okay, Marilyn, get to work. And I write down what I get as answers to my questions.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing. This is how I prepare these questions.
Okay.
I asked before I got to sleep, and I
great. Great questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. Is there anything you would like to say to people? Something that you feel?
Well, I'm very glad for this interview, Štěpánka, and for the fact that it will go to people everywhere.
Yeah.
So I want to say how grateful I am for the World Game. I'm speaking from Antalya, from our 5th International World Game. I'm from the big hearts of people everywhere who want the world to work and who are willing to do what it takes to, first of all, live small. In other words, not have the metaphor that to be human, we have to have everything. We don't have to own a lot. We can do more with less. We can live the life of a human being with the clothes that we have, with the people that we know, with the wonderful media and international connections that are possible, and with the choices that we make to just be ourselves in the world fully and completely. And I want to thank people for the opportunities that you've given me to be your Erickson friend and sometimes guide and sometimes genuine learner from you and from your wisdom. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity.
And I want to thank you, Marilyn, and I wish you that you keep shining as bright as you have been so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.